Good afternoon, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. Uh, for best video, please put your Zoom in speaker mode. My name is Ryan Bates, and I'm the Executive Director of End Gun Violence Michigan. We're a statewide coalition of 45 faith, community, parent, student, and teacher organizations working to end gun violence in our state. I'm filling in today as our moderator for Tanisha Ash-Shakur of Voices of Color. She is unfortunately stuck in court. We're here today because 70 Michigan women and children are killed every year by their abusers with a firearm. Nearly 40% of women will experience domestic violence or sexual assault in their lifetimes. Similarly, 35 to 40% of women in Michigan who are killed with a gun are killed by an intimate partner. Incredibly, 68% of mass shootings in our country are related to domestic violence. This is an intolerable wave of violence that families often suffer in silence. These stories need to come out from behind closed doors, and our leaders in Lansing need to do more to protect survivors of domestic violence. The good news is that the legislature is making progress on these issues. This spring, our legislature passed the first gun safety laws in our state in 40 years. Universal background checks, extreme risk protection orders, and the safe storage law were all an important start. They will save lives. Now, we need to build on that success and pass protections for domestic violence survivors. In the House, that's House Bill 4945 and 4946, for the Senate version, SB 471 and 472. These proposals would prevent anyone convicted of domestic violence in Michigan from possessing or purchasing firearms for 8 years after the completion of their sentence. These bills have been passed in the Senate. They've been passed in the House Criminal Justice Committee. And now we just have one last step before the governor's desk, which is a vote on the floor of the House. 31 other states have similar laws, and these states have lower rates of domestic violence homicide. It's time for Michigan to stop being a laggard on gun safety and instead to become a leader. Those who've been convicted of domestic violence have proven that they're willing to be violent toward their family. Why would we ever let them have access to a deadly weapon? Through their actions, abusers have shown us who they are. It's time we believe them. With me today on the program are what some might consider unlikely allies, gun owners, including a survivor of domestic violence who support these gun safety laws. But really, this shouldn't seem that unusual. Most gun owners are doing the right thing and are acting responsibly. The vast majority of gun owners support bills that would protect domestic violence survivors. We're here to give a voice today to the everyday gun owners and not just the extremes. I'm going to start by introducing my good friend, Jonathan Gold. John?
Hi, my name's Jonathan Gold. I am the president of Giffords Gun Owners for Safety in Michigan. I've been a pistol instructor in the state of Michigan for 25 years. But most importantly for this call, I spent 25 years of my life protecting battered women and children, both before trial and when under threat. I hope I'm the only person here who's been shot at by a domestic abuser. I really do. I really hope that none of you on this call has had that experience. But having done that for 25 years, I can tell you I've seen all assortments of people and all kinds of danger. And the last thing that we need to do as responsible gun owners or as responsible citizens is to hand a deadly weapon to someone who has proved that their aggressive nature goes beyond the law. There are reputable studies now showing drastic increases in domestic violence deaths over the last 5 years. I have sat at that door. I have sat at that hotel room door waiting for the monster who's coming. And I am telling you that the last thing we need are monsters who can kill at a distance or in an instant. No responsible gun owner should oppose this legislation. Nowhere in this legislation does it violate a constitutional right. We've taken rights away from felons and other people who have committed acts of violence. And no responsible gun owner should oppose barbarians at the gate with firearms. I'm going to hand this over to my counterpart at Giffords, Kristen Perry-Mihaly.
Hi, I am Kristen Perry. I'm also a part of Giffords Gun Owners for Safety. I, along with John, am a senior ambassador with the group. With that, I have been a gun owner for a few years. I have 2 children in my home, and I made that choice to bring a firearm into my home to have a sense of safety. And as a gun owner, I know that that always needs to be at the forefront of these decisions of who has access to firearms and who does not have access. As a therapist, gun owner, advocate, and mom, safety is always at the forefront of my world. I've been a therapist for almost 20 years. In those nearly 2 decades, I've worked in community mental health, foster care, and private practice, and I have seen domestic violence impact families in all of those communities. I have also seen the devastating impact of gun violence in families across the board. Mass shootings grab the headlines, but far more often it's guns at home that pose the greatest threat. We don't see the headlines of the catastrophic combination of guns and homes with abuse. As a therapist, I assess for client safety, including asking about the use of drugs and alcohol, if there's any violence in the home, and I ask about the presence of guns in the home. I know when a gun is present in a home with domestic violence, there is a 5 times greater chance of death. Not only is a person tragically and needlessly killed, but children are forced to face a world without their parents. Families go through life events with an empty seat at the table, and communities lose the individuals that help them thrive. One human casualty leaves a ripple effect of trauma. Once I met with a child whose father had experienced his own traumas. He had not yet begun to heal those wounds, and they festered into violence towards the child's mother. This mother came to me describing an escalating pattern of violence. We created a safety plan for her and her children, including removing a firearm from the home. This mother and her children reached safety, but not all families do. Today, we remember those taken by domestic violence because we have seen too many casualties. As I said, in addition to being mother, I'm also a gun owner. Like I said, I've weighed the balance of safety of having a gun in my home versus not, and I chose to own a gun to protect my family. I store that gun in a safe at all times, but I know I have the responsibility to remove that gun from my home if other factors make that firearm a tool of danger instead of a tool of protection. If I was a threat to someone, or if someone in my home was a threat to me, access to that firearm would have to be removed. I know other responsible gun owners want a safe world as well, and a safe world starts with a safe home. This means preventing access to firearms to those abusers that pose a danger to themselves and loved ones. Losing sleep and crying over too many kids and parents taken by guns propelled me to become an advocate for gun safety laws. Too many of those were taken by the hands of someone they loved with a gun. But love should not kill. We must have laws in place to prevent deadly firearm violence within families and keep our loved ones at the dinner table, parent-teacher conferences, and bedtime tuck-ins. Join me in honoring those already taken by creating change through laws that keep us all safe. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Kazia for her remarks.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing. Your work in the community is absolutely vital. So thank you for that. And thank you everyone for being here and allowing me to share a part of my story. Domestic violence is dark and insidious, and it affects countless individuals and families worldwide. It doesn't discriminate, and it crosses all social, economic, and cultural boundaries. I'm here today as a mother, a fellow social worker, an advocate, a responsible gun owner, and a survivor. I want to shed light on a particularly harrowing aspect of my life. My then 2-year-old daughter and I were threatened by firearm, specifically my husband's handgun. And this was the same gun that I practiced on and used to obtain my own CPL license, which I still hold today. I'll never forget the first time that he threatened us. It was an early summer day. I was outside holding my daughter and watching my husband grow. And without provocation, he turned to me expressionless and said, if I ever left him, that he would kill my daughter, myself, and then himself in the shed in our backyard. I remember he took my daughter from my arms and just continued grilling. And this had been, of course, years of abuse prior. I remember staring back at him, tears welling and panic coursing through my veins. And I knew we were in trouble and I had to make a plan and I needed to get out. So I began backing up my car instead of pulling in. I packed getaway bags, one at my office, one at my parents'. I would often have to hide the gun keys at night, especially when he was drunk and in fits of rage. And I was terrified night and day. For safety, I only let my parents and one close friend know about the abuse inside of our home. He's a small business owner and loved by people in our community. You'd never know. And in part, I was too ashamed to tell. And what would that say about me? In a devastating turn of events, only a month after the first time I physically left him, and we know it takes survivors multiple times to leave their partners. I was diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer and found myself completely helpless. Instead of caring for me and our daughter, he continued to be violent, not coming to chemotherapy, infusions, having me walk home after my port was placed. And day after day, he would choose himself and he would choose violence. So while my hair fell out and my body weakened, he went to the shooting range, jetted off to the Bahamas, and drank himself into oblivion, constantly reminding me it would only take seconds to end our lives. After a particularly chilling incident, he threatened to rape and kill our close family friends, as well as their daughters. While my body was crumbling from the weight of the chemo, I said no more. With the support of my family, his family, my friends, a competent attorney, and a judge who believed me and provided an ex parte order, I left. This month, I had the shed demolished, leaving only bricks in the ground. And I'm not here to dwell in the darkness of those days. I've survived cancer, and I'm not going to go down without a fight now. DV is silent, as Ryan had stated, and I won't remain silent anymore. I understand the great risk of me speaking up and speaking out, but I'm doing this for my daughter and for other families who have experienced the same fear and pain of domestic violence. And my pain will become progress. I feared turning him in and still do today. As an advocate and social worker, we are not fully protected. I know that. Had there been a law in place where I knew without a shadow of a doubt that his guns would be removed and not be able to go back to our local dealer, I would have left sooner. I'm a gun owner. I come from a family of gun owners. We can be for both protecting survivors and for responsible gun ownership. It's not either or. These laws are common sense. Please hear us. I'm asking the House to close loopholes, to stand with us. Don't ignore our stories. My daughter's name is Eleanor, and she deserves safety and the safety of her mother. So thank you today for listening to my story. And I'd like to hand this off to Representative O'Neill to speak on this life-saving bill.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly, for sharing your heart. And that's why we're here today. And I want to thank all of you for being here to address House Bills 4945, 4946. This term, House Democrats have passed several sensible gun reform laws, such as requiring individual universal background checks on gun sales, enacting safe storage laws, and establishing extreme risk protection orders. These new laws are significant steps in the right direction, but there's more work to be done. We need to continue to build on the success and continue to protect Michiganders from gun violence. My colleagues and I reintroduced gun legislation. I think it's very important for the protection of Michiganders. Statistics have shown that 1 in 4 homicides in the United States is related to gun domestic violence. The use of firearms in domestic altercations has been found to increase the risk of fatalities. It's also important to note that the implementation of legislation that prevents convicted domestic abusers from getting their hands on guns is very, very important. These bill packages we are working on will bring Michigan law more in line with the federal protection, allowing the state and local prosecutors to enforce misdemeanor domestic violence prohibitions. And I think that's very important. The bills will also keep domestic violence survivors safe by prohibiting abusers convicted of prior assaults from accessing guns for a certain period of time. I am committed, as well as my colleagues on the Senate side, to do everything we can to pass this package into law and to better protect Michiganders from violence by preventing dangerous individuals from accessing guns. And I won't stop until this package of bills is on the governor's desk. So I'm thanking you for all of your hard work and this team's hard work, and for the victims sharing your stories. It brings up really fresh wounds, I know. And so for that, I'm grateful, and that's why we're working so hard to get these packages over the finish line. Thank you.
Representative O'Neill, thank you for your leadership on this issue. I know you've been working for many years to see this progress, and it's heartening to all of us to see these bills move forward, not just get hearings, but for the first time ever, get votes in the House and in the Senate. So thank you for your dedication. And Kristen and John, want to thank you for your advocacy as responsible gun owners. I know some of you have gotten threats because of your advocacy, and it hasn't stopped you, and you haven't backed down. And finally, I want to thank Kazia. It's not fair that we should have to ask survivors to come out here and share their stories and share their trauma to convince the rest of society that what's happening to you is real. It's not fair. And I am so grateful to you for taking on that burden on behalf of everyone in our state and the next generation of women who hopefully don't have to live through this. So thank you very much. I know this is a risk for you as well. Speaking to the legislation, our hope is that there will be a vote on this legislation soon, and we're calling on members of the House, Democrats and Republicans, to support it. These bills passed in the Senate on a bipartisan basis, and we know that they can pass on a bipartisan basis in the House as well. With that, we'll open the floor to questions from the press, if there are any.
Ryan, if I may just make a comment
Thank
on
you.
your last comments. I think it's very important that our constituent base just continue to reach out to the legislators on both sides. As you know, we do have great support as we testified in committee. We got some great support from the Attorney General's office, which is very significant in this whole process. And so it'd be hard pressed to not see a bipartisan vote on this, because it impacts all of us. I think I made a comment during the actual committee hearing that, whether directly or indirectly, all of us have some knowledge, connection, or in sort of impacted by just domestic violence, whether close relative or distant friend, So it's an issue that we all have had some sort of an experience in and being impacted by is what I'm trying to say. So also reach out to my colleagues and just it's like, as you said, for Ms. Kelly to revisit that, that's really disheartening. I was at an event last week in Saginaw for domestic violence on our Underground Railroad. and to have the victims there to relive that experience. You could hear a pin drop in the audience. It was probably over 200 people in this meeting, and it just reinforces for me. I felt just I don't know the right word to say, but I felt not gratified, but I felt like what I'm doing, what we're doing is so important. It's having those stories, and they're all over the country. And we really have to address this issue and protect victims and families, because it impacts the entire family structure in the community that we reside in. So I'm really just honored to even be a part of this. As you said, we've been working on this for a couple years, to get this thing over the finish line. We introduced it last when we were in the minority, and it didn't go anywhere. And so just honored to be a part of this movement. And I do know that we've talked about it in our caucus on the House side. And when we get back next week, I'll be speaking again with the House not legal team, but policy team, to make sure we get this on the docket, for a vote. So that's going to be my commitment, because the Senate did their job. So it's now for us to do our job. And so I'm going to take this head on and take it to the speaker and to our leadership team to let's put this on the books so we can vote it up.
And when that vote goes to the floor, Representative, I can promise we'll bring a lot of folks to cheer you on as you do it.
Thank you.
Are there questions from the press before we close the call? Okay, great. I'm glad we were so comprehensive. I'll be sending out a release shortly with a recording of this call, along with quotes from some of our speakers. Thank you again to Representative Amos Anil, Kazia Kelly, John Gold, and Kristen Parra-Michalek. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great evening.